right now, you probably have more quote-unquote friends living inside your pocket than your ancestors met in their entire
Oh,
lifetimes.
easily, without a doubt.
Right. I mean, we are walking around with thousands of connections, followers, contacts, all readily available at just the swipe of a thumb.
Yeah, it's literally at our fingertips.
But here is the wild part. Statistically speaking, you are more likely to suffer from chronic loneliness today than any generation in human history.
Which is just, it's a profound contradiction when you really stop and think about it.
It totally is. We have built the absolute ultimate digital interface for connection. Like, we've optimized the aesthetic, we've mastered the response times, but we've completely, totally forgotten the underlying architecture of actual human intimacy.
Yeah, we possess this technological illusion of closeness, while simultaneously we're just starving for the biological reality of it.
Starving for it,
All right.
exactly.
I mean, we've spent a decade obsessing over the user interface of our social lives, but the back-end code, the psychological infrastructure that actually sustains a bond, is just entirely broken.
So broken. And that brings us to today. Welcome to the deep dive. For you listening right now, whether you are, say, prepping for a high-stakes networking event, or maybe trying to navigate a deeply frustrating dynamic with a romantic partner, or you are just insanely curious about the hidden mechanics of human bonding, we are skipping the generic fluff today.
Please, yes. No fluff.
We are looking at an incredibly dense, genuinely fascinating stack of documents. So we have a synthesis of insights from 7 different AI models.
Yeah.
Right. Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, Copilot, Grok, DeepSeek, and ChatGPT. And they were all tasked with analyzing the absolute best practices for relationship building.
And we also have an analytical briefing document, which cites heavy-hitting institutions like the Mental Health Foundation and helpguide.org.
Yeah, the clinical data.
Exactly. And anchoring all of this data is this really standout essay titled Beyond the Checklist, The 7 Surprising Principles of Deeply Meaningful Connections.
Which is such a good title.
It is. And what makes this specific stack of sources so compelling, I think, is the complete absence of cliché.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right. You aren't going to hear, never go to bed angry or communication is key.
Which we've all heard a million times.
Exactly. The models and the clinical sources were actually directed to bypass the symptoms of a relationship and analyze the root mechanisms. We are basically looking at the literal physics of human behavior here.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to decode the actual architecture of deep connection.
The architecture, yes.
We want to move past that transactional advice and uncover the specific, actionable, psychological, and behavioral mechanisms that actually make a bond resilient, healthy, and profoundly meaningful for you.
Which is no small task.
No, it's huge. But before we can even talk about building a better relationship, we have to look at the foundational flaw in how modern society approaches the very concept of another human being.
Right, the way we even conceptualize it.
Yeah. And the essay refers to this as the connection paradox.
Yeah, the connection paradox.
Yeah.
Which is really the defining relational crisis of our era.
Totally.
The essay points out that we have basically inadvertently adopted a mindset of consumption when it comes to people.
Consumption.
Yes. We treat relationships as a destination to reach, or a checklist to complete. We say things like, I secured the partner, or I landed the mentor.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Or I acquired this friend group.
Exactly.
Like we're putting them in a shopping cart and just checking out. Done. Purchased. Next item.
Yes. And that mindset just fundamentally misinterprets what a relationship actually is.
Right.
Like, Copilot's synthesis of the data specifically noted that building a meaningful connection is not about achieving a static milestone.
It's not a trophy on a shelf.
No, not at all. It is about cultivating an evolving space. Because when you view a relationship as a destination you've already reached, you tend to evaluate it using a very transactional question, which is this working?
Is this working? Wow. Which sounds like you're evaluating a refrigerator.
Yes.
Like, is it keeping the milk cold? Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Let's not look at it again until it literally breaks down.
That is the exact trap we fall into. But if you shift your perspective, as the models suggest, and you view the relationship as a physical space that you and this other person co-inhabit.
A room.
Right, a room. The question changes entirely. You have to stop asking, is this working? And you are forced to ask, How is the air in this room?
Oh, I love that. How is the air in this
That
room?
changes everything.
It changes the entire metric of success, because if a relationship is a room, it doesn't matter that the walls are still standing if the room is filled with toxic smoke,
Right.
or if it's freezing cold, or if all the oxygen has just been sucked right out of it.
Precisely. The structure might be there, but the environment is unlivable.
It actually makes me think about how we optimize our smartphones.
Oh, how so?
Well, we collect dozens, maybe hundreds of apps, right? And we carefully arrange them in these color-coded folders on our home screen.
Okay, see.
Right. We've perfected the interface, but we never actually open half of them to use their functions.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Are we treating people like unopened apps on our home screen? Like,
Okay.
we've got the icon, the connection is there, we can see it on the screen, but we aren't actually engaging with the function of the relationship.
That is a brilliant analogy, but it is actually a bit more volatile than that.
Wait, really? How?
Well, with an app, if you don't open it, the data just sits there dormant.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't care.
Sure, yeah.
But human beings are living systems.
Yeah.
In a relationship, neglect actively breeds resentment. So the app in this scenario doesn't just sit there. It starts sending you passive-aggressive push notifications.
Oh my gosh.
Starts draining your battery in the background.
That is terrifyingly accurate.
Right. We've optimized the superficial interface of connection while completely abandoning the deeper utility of it.
So having the connection isn't the work. Tending to the environment of the connection is the work.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
True belonging, and this is according to the consensus of all 7 AI models, it isn't about finding the perfect person to just add to your home screen.
Right.
It is the highly intentional, daily practice of cultivating a living bond.
Daily practice.
Yes. Focusing on the architecture of the quote-unquote Rayo-free ensures that the space remains expansive enough for both individuals to actually evolve.
You are designing an environment.
Exactly. You are designing an environment that supports 2 completely separate lives as they intertwine over time.
Which naturally leads us to a massive hurdle.
Oh, a huge one.
Right, because let's say we agree that the relationship is this shared room, this evolving space we co-inhabit.
Okay.
How do we make the air in that room safe enough for both people to actually take off their armor?
Yeah, that's the real challenge.
Because for a lot of us, we've spent decades building up this, emotional Kevlar. We don't just walk into a new room and take it off.
No, it's our protection.
Exactly. And you can't have a deep connection if everyone is walking around in a bulletproof vest.
You really can't.
So the sources point to a very specific mechanism for dismantling this, which they call radical authenticity and the neuroscience of vulnerability.
Yes, and this is a point where we really have to completely discard our cultural programming.
Because we're taught the opposite, right?
Entirely the opposite. From a very young age, vulnerability is framed as a liability.
Yeah.
We are taught to hide our flaws, to, project competence, to never let them see you sweat.
Fake it till you make it.
Exactly. But the essay, Beyond the Checklist, looks at the clinical data and frames vulnerability entirely differently.
How so?
In a high-functioning relationship, vulnerability isn't a weakness at all. It is a strategic power move.
A strategic power move. Let's pause on that, because normally you associate a power move in a relationship with dominance.
Right.
Like, it's the person who cares less, who texts back slower, who never shows their cards. That's usually what we think of as holding the power.
Which is so toxic, but yes, that's the cultural narrative.
Yeah.
But the clinical psychology backing this up completely inverts that idea.
Okay, unpack that for me.
So sharing your internal landscape, meaning the fears, the flaws, the imposter syndrome, the anxieties that you usually hide behind a professional or social mask.
Right, the stuff we don't put on Instagram.
Exactly. Sharing that is the specific biological catalyst for genuine intimacy.
Biological.
Yes, the briefing document gets really deep into the physiological impact here. Revealing an imperfection actually acts as a primary social signal of safety.
Yay, really?
Yeah. When you are genuinely authentic about a flaw, it actively lowers your partner's defensive cortisol levels.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we aren't just talking about a warm, fuzzy emotional feeling here. This is an actual physiological response.
Very much so.
Because cortisol is the stress hormone, right? That's the chemical your brain pumps into your bloodstream when you are, being chased by a bear.
It is the exact same chemical.
That's wild.
When a human being senses judgment or criticism or masking, when they feel like you are hiding something or just performing for them,
Yeah.
their amygdala perceives that as a potential threat.
And the cortisol spikes.
The cortisol spikes. They prepare to defend themselves. But when you reveal a vulnerability, you send a signal to their autonomic nervous system that essentially says, I am not a threat.
Wow.
It literally shifts their nervous system from a state of defense to a state of connection. It establishes what the essay calls relational homeostasis.
Relational homeostasis.
Yes. A state where both parties feel biologically secure enough to drop the Kevlar.
That makes me look at the advice from the AI models in a totally different light, actually.
How so?
Well, the briefing document noted that trust doesn't emerge from grand cinematic gestures, right?
Right.
It isn't built by buying someone an expensive watch or making this massive public declaration of loyalty. ChatGPT and Perplexity specifically highlighted that trust is built from the compound interest of small acts of sincerity over time.
Compound interest. That's the perfect phrase for it.
Like keeping small promises, admitting when you are wrong, and just maintaining confidentiality.
Yes, because those small acts are what actually maintain that low cortisol environment. Every time you admit a mistake, say, you forgot to pick up the dry cleaning.
Right.
And instead of blaming traffic or making up an excuse, you just say, hey, I completely dropped the ball on that. I am so sorry.
Just owning it.
Just owning it. By doing that, you are proving that the room is safe.
Yeah.
You're proving that reality can be acknowledged without a war breaking out.
I love that. But I do want to push back on the terminology here for a second, because I think a listener might get tripped up on this.
Okay, sure.
If vulnerability is a quote-unquote power move and it's strategic, doesn't that make it sound inherently calculated?
I can see how it sounds that way, yes.
Like almost manipulative. Like, if I know that showing a flaw lowers your cortisol, isn't that just a tactic? To me, it sounds almost like a disarmament treaty between two nations.
A disarmament treaty.
Interesting. Yeah, like you show your empty hands first so the other side knows it's safe to put down their weapons. Is that what the sources are getting at?
I would actually caution against the treaty analogy.
Oh, why?
Because a disarmament treaty implies a simultaneous negotiation. It implies that both sides sit down, sign a piece of paper, and agree to put their weapons down at the exact same time so nobody gets hurt.
Right, it's coordinated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But radical authenticity doesn't work like that at all. It requires asymmetrical risk.
Asymmetrical risks.
Yes. You have to drop your weapons before you know if the other person is going to drop theirs.
Oh.
You need to show your empty hands while they are still holding their shield. That is why it is terrifying, and that is why it is powerful.
Okay, that is a huge distinction. So it's unilateral disarmament. You are taking the hit of the exposure without any guarantee of safety.
Yes. And regarding your point about it being manipulative, this is where DeepSeek and Gemini's analysis of transparency comes in.
Okay.
The human nervous system is incredibly sophisticated at detecting fraud.
We have good radar.
Very good radar. If you fake vulnerability, like if you manufacture a tiny acceptable quote-unquote flaw to strategically manipulate someone into trusting you.
Like saying your biggest weakness is that you care too much.
Exactly like that. The other person's subconscious will instantly pick up on the incongruence, and the cortisol levels will actually spike higher the moment the insincerity is detected.
Because now you are not just a threat.
Exactly. You are a deceptive threat, which is way worse. So true vulnerability must be agonizingly authentic to work as a catalyst for intimacy.
I can't hack the system.
You really can't.
You actually have to be brave.
Yes.
Okay, so let's say we've done the work. We've unilaterally disarmed, we've been authentic, the other person responded with authenticity, and we've created this shared, safe space.
The room is built.
The air in the room is fantastic, we feel completely understood, but the sources highlight a really counterintuitive danger that happens next.
They do, yes.
What happens when that room gets too comfortable? When you start spending all your time in there and stop going outside? This brings us to what they call the independence paradox.
The independence paradox.
Okay.
This addresses the fatal flaw in how our culture romanticizes love and, honestly, even deep friendship.
How so?
Well, the standard assumption is that the closer you get, the more your lives should merge into one indistinguishable unit.
Two halves of a whole.
Right. We celebrate couples who do absolutely everything together, who finish each other's sentences, who have no separation whatsoever.
Yeah, that's the dream, supposedly.
Supposedly. But the clinical sources, particularly the datacittinghelpguide.org, warn that total enmeshment is actually incredibly dangerous.
Bandy.
Yes. Also, we fundamentally requires a resilient, independent I.
The essay uses this phrase, growing apart to stay together, which, if you've been taught that true love means becoming one soul, Sounds like a recipe for a breakup.
It sounds totally backwards.
It does. But the briefing document puts a massive emphasis on maintaining separate identities, having outside friendships, and pursuing individual hobbies. It frames self-care not as a luxury, but as a relational necessity.
A necessity, yes.
Why is it so dangerous when we lose those individual boundaries? Why can't we just merge?
Because when you lose your boundaries, you lose your ability to self-regulate.
Self-regulate.
Yeah. Human beings experience stress naturally from work, from health issues, from just living in the world. If you maintain a strong individual identity, you have external mechanisms to process that stress.
Like what?
You go for a run, you talk to a mentor, you engage in a hobby that's just yours.
Right.
But if you are totally enmeshed with your partner, you lose those external outlets, and you begin to project your internal stress entirely onto them.
Oh, you make them responsible for your baseline emotional state.
Precisely. If you don't have an identity outside of the relationship, your partner basically becomes your sole emotional stabilizer.
That sounds exhausting.
It is an impossible burden for one human being to carry. The briefing document really highlights the necessity of quick stress relief techniques for yourself.
You have to manage your own stuff.
You have to be able to manage your own baseline anxiety. Because if you can't self-soothe, you will chronically misread your partner's neutral behavior, like, say, them just needing a quiet evening alone.
Right, just reading a book in the other room.
Exactly. You'll misread that as a catastrophic threat to your safety. You will demand that they fix an internal alarm bell that they didn't even ring.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's move away from the room metaphor for a second and think about this in terms of structural engineering.
Okay, I like that.
Imagine a relationship is a massive suspension bridge.
A bridge.
Yeah. You have these two giant independent towers, one on each side of the water, and the roadway is strung between them.
Right.
If someone looked at that and said, you know what, those towers are too far apart, they don't look like they love each other, let's move them closer together into the middle of the river.
Oh, wow.
What happens? The cables go slack, the tension disappears, and the bridge instantly collapses into the water.
That's entirely accurate.
Right. The actual strength of the connection relies entirely on the tension created by the distance between the two towers.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. The distance between the towers provides the structural integrity.
You need the space.
If you eliminate the distance, you destroy the bridge. Copilot Synthesis points out that when you invest in understanding your own needs, your own triggers, and your own aspirations.
When you fortify your own tower.
Exactly. When you fortify your own tower, you bring a much stronger, more balanced version of yourself into the relationship. You are ensuring that you are actually capable of bearing weight.
Right.
You are making a genuine contribution to the partnership rather than just leaning your entire body weight on the other person until you both literally fall over.
Okay, but let's deal with the reality of those two separate towers.
Sure.
If you have two highly independent people with their own goals, their own outside friends, and their own stressology, they're eventually going to clash.
Inevitably.
The wind is going to blow, the bridge is going to sway, and there will be friction.
Yes.
How do we handle that friction without tearing the tables apart? This is where the sources introduce a very specific protocol called the curiosity shift.
The curiosity shift. The foundational premise here is vital. And honestly, it requires a massive mindset shift for most people.
Okay.
The sources unanimously agree that conflict is an inevitable feature of deep connection. It is not a bug, and it is certainly not a sign of failure.
Which is hard to remember in the moment.
Very hard. We have to stop viewing disagreements as a signal that the relationship is doomed. The danger to the relationship isn't the conflict itself.
It's not.
No, the danger lies entirely in what the essay calls the blame response.
The blame response. Okay, walk me through what that actually looks like in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
Say a couple is arguing about finances, or two co-founders are arguing over a product launch. What is happening biologically?
Okay, so when we feel criticized or misunderstood, our amygdala fires, right?
Right.
Cortisol spikes, and we enter a fight or flight state.
We're back in the woods with the bear.
Exactly. And in that state, the brain needs an enemy to explain the sudden surge of adrenaline.
Oh, wow. It needs an enemy.
It has to justify the panic.
Yeah.
So we default to blame.
Yeah.
We point the finger. We say, you are irresponsible, or you never listen to my ideas.
Right.
And this triggers an immediate, equal, and opposite biological reaction in the other person.
Because now they're being attacked by a bear.
Exactly. They feel attacked, their cortisol spikes, and they become defensive. They counterattack.
Yeah.
You're no longer trying to solve the problem. You're just two nervous systems locked in a cycle of aggression and defensiveness.
It's a total race to the bottom.
It really is.
So how do we stop the biology? Like, how do we actually stop the blame response?
We have to adopt the curiosity shift. This means intentionally, actively overriding your biological urge to defend yourself.
Which is so hard.
Incredibly hard. But instead of viewing your partner as a threat to be neutralized, you have to view their anger or frustration as a coded message.
A coded message.
Yes. You view the disagreement as an opportunity to decode a deeper layer of your partner's experience. You stop asking, how dare you speak to me like that? And you start asking, why does this specific issue matter so much to you that it's causing this reaction?
Oh, I see. It reminds me of how a seasoned software developer debugs broken code.
Debugging. I like that.
Yeah, like if a program crashes, a good developer doesn't take it personally.
Right.
They don't yell at the computer monitor, they don't get defensive, and they don't blame the keyboard.
No, that would be useless.
They get intensely obsessively curious about why the code is producing that specific unwanted result. They look at the inputs. They ask, what line of code caused this failure? Can we debug our relationships like that? Can we look at a partner's frustrating behavior, say them snapping at us over dirty dishes, and say, okay, the dishes aren't the real issue. What is the emotional input causing this output?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the exact mechanism of a mature relationship. It requires debugging the dynamic rather than attacking the person.
Right.
And the sources actually provide a very rigorous, almost mechanical tool for doing this.
What's the tool?
The strict use of I statements.
Now, I know I statements sound like basic couples therapy 101. Everyone has heard this.
Oh, absolutely.
But the way the models broke down the psychology of why they work is what fascinated me.
Right, because it isn't just a linguistic trick. It is a psychological de-escalation tactic.
Oh, so?
The essay gives the example of shifting from saying, you always ignore me, to saying, I feel invisible when we don't check in.
Okay, huge difference there.
Massive difference.
Yeah.
When you say you always ignore me, you're acting as a prosecutor. You are literally putting your partner on the witness stand.
And their only logical biological response is to become a defense attorney.
Exactly. They will just list all the times they didn't ignore you to prove your absolute statement wrong.
Right. They'll say, what about Tuesday? I texted you on Tuesday.
Exactly. And the actual issue, your pain, never gets addressed.
Because they're too busy defending their character.
But when you say, I feel invisible, you aren't attacking their character.
Right.
You are simply stating an undeniable fact about your own internal state. You are removing the humiliation from the exchange, and you are inviting them to witness your experience.
You are making them a witness to your pain rather than the cause of it.
Exactly. The Mental Health Foundation stresses the importance of this psychological safety. They advise preparing for difficult conversations and critically pausing if you get too upset.
Taking a time out.
Yes, because if your heart rate goes above 100 beats per minute, your prefrontal cortex, the logical part of your brain, starts to shut down.
Wow. Over 100 beats per minute.
You literally cannot execute the curiosity shift if you are in full fight or flight. You have to take a break, regulate your nervous system, and return when you can actually be curious.
Resolving issues without humiliation is the absolute hallmark of a growth mindset.
And a massive part of that debugging process, once the immediate fire is put out, is what the sources call the forgiveness factor.
The forgiveness factor, yeah.
Which I thought was a really nuanced point. The AI synthesis strongly advises forgiving freely, but not blindly.
It is a crucial distinction. Forgiving freely doesn't mean being a doormat, and it doesn't mean ignoring a pattern of toxic behavior.
Right.
It means that once an issue has been thoroughly debugged and both parties have taken accountability, you have to let it go.
Let it go.
You focus intensely on the resolution moving forward without weaponizing the past.
Weaponizing the past.
Yeah, because you cannot debug the code if you keep punishing the software for a glitch that happened 3 versions ago.
Oh, man, that is so true. If you bring up a mistake from 2024 every time you have an argument in 2026, the room is no longer safe.
You are basically poisoning the air in the room with old smoke.
Precisely.
Okay, so we know how to construct the space. We know how to disarm our defenses. We know how to maintain structural independence. And we know how to repair the bond when it fractures during a conflict.
We've got the blueprints.
But how do we sustain it day to day? Like, how do we make sure those fractures are less frequent to begin with?
Right. Prevention.
Because nobody wants to live in a constant state of debugging code.
Nobody.
That brings us to our final major theme here: active presence and the micro-momentum of connection.
Yes, and this is where we really have to differentiate between merely existing in the same physical space and actually connecting.
Because they aren't the same thing.
Not at all.
Mm.
We frequently, and tragically I'd say, confuse quality time with mere physical proximity.
Yeah.
You can sit on the same sofa with your partner or your roommate for 4 hours, watching a streaming show, scrolling on your phones, occasionally showing each other a meme, and remain completely, totally emotionally isolated.
I feel like you're attacking my Tuesday nights right now.
Huh, we all do it. But true connection requires what helpguide.org calls mindful presence.
Mindful presence. The essay uses the phrase hearing the subtle intonations in their voice.
Right.
It's not just listening to the words to formulate your response, or waiting for your turn to speak.
Which is what most of us do.
Yeah. It's active listening to understand the emotional landscape they are currently walking through. It's noticing that their voice got a little tight when they mentioned their boss and actually pausing to say, hey, you sounded stressed when you mentioned the meeting. What happened?
That is exactly it. Active listening validates the other person's perspective. It makes them feel profoundly seen.
Seen, yes.
But beyond just listening, the day-to-day longevity of a bond relies on what the essay brilliantly terms micro-momentum.
Micro-momentum, I love that.
We are so socially conditioned to believe that relationships are saved by grand gestures, right?
The movie moments.
Exactly. The expensive anniversary trip to Paris,
Yeah.
the massive bouquet of flowers delivered to the office, the dramatic apology in the rain.
Right.
But the clinical sources argue that longevity is actually the result of the compound interest of gratitude.
The briefing document is remarkably clear on this, actually. Consistency in small acts of kindness is the actual bedrock.
The bedrock, yes.
It's a sincere compliment about how they handled a phone call. It's an apology for snapping when you were just hungry.
A hangry apology.
The hangry apology goes a long way. Or it's a brief text in the middle of a mundane Tuesday just to say, I'm thinking about you and I appreciate you.
Yes.
These microactions create a massive reservoir of goodwill. And helpguide.org points out that shared experiences act as daily deposits into this reservoir.
Daily deposits.
Right. Whether that's understanding each other's 5 love languages or just volunteering together for a local cause, it's about constant small-scale momentum.
So true.
So what does this all mean in practice? To me, it frames the relationship like a high-performance engine.
Okay, an engine.
Yeah, we tend to treat relationships like we just need to occasionally put premium fuel in the tank,
Yeah.
The grand gestures, the vacations, the big date nights. We think that premium fuel is going to keep the car running perfectly.
Right.
But micro-momentum, the daily gratitude, the active listening, the small texts that is the motor oil.
Oh, I see.
You can put all the premium expensive fuel you want into that engine, but if you haven't been changing the oil, if there is no daily lubrication of gratitude, the engine is going to seize the second you put it under pressure.
That is such a vivid picture.
Right. A grand apology trip to Paris won't fix an engine that has completely seized up from daily neglect.
That is an incredibly apt mechanical comparison. If the engine is seized from neglect, the grand gesture just looks like you're trying to throw money at a mechanical failure.
Yeah.
Which breeds intense resentment. It feels performative.
Totally performative.
And this raises an important question for all of us, something the models really force us to confront.
What's that?
How often do we actively invest in this micromomentum? Do we take our partners, our oldest friends, our daily colleagues for granted simply because they are there?
Because they're just an icon on our home screen.
Exactly. All 7 AI models universally converged on this exact point. Relationships do not thrive on grand milestones alone. They thrive on the balance of shared, macro goals and everyday, micro moments of care. Consistent gratitude ensures that the air in the room remains oxygenated.
It is so incredibly validating and frankly a little awe-inspiring to see all these disparate sources. I mean, artificial intelligence models processing vast amounts of human data, mental health foundations relying on clinical psychology, and deeply personal essays all converging on the exact same underlying architecture.
It really is.
It proves that a relationship is never truly a finished product. You don't just build the house, hand over the keys, and walk away.
No, the work is never done.
You have to maintain the plumbing, you have to patch the roof, you have to clean the windows so the light can get in.
It is a living, breathing ecosystem. And the beauty of this framework is that if you approach your relationships with that mindset of continuous cultivation, The work doesn't feel like a heavy, exhausting burden.
It doesn't.
No, it feels like the natural, rewarding process of tending to a garden that you get to live in.
Wow. Let's synthesize the massive journey we've been on today. We started with the foundational paradox of our modern age, which is the reality that we are feeling deeply, chronically isolated despite being hyperconnected through our digital interfaces.
The connection paradox.
Right. And we learned that the antidote is a total paradigm shift. We have to stop treating relationships as items to consume and start treating them as living, evolving spaces.
Yes.
We learned how to make that space safe through radical authenticity, discovering the strategic physiological power of unilaterally disarming and being genuinely vulnerable to lower defensive cortisol.
And then we also explored the counterintuitive necessity of the independence paradox.
Right, the suspension bridge.
Yes. We discovered that to have a resilient resention, we must maintain a fiercely strong eye, operating like those separate towers of a suspension bridge to provide structural integrity and prevent toxic enmeshment.
We learned how to de-weaponize our arguments through the curiosity shift, basically overriding our biological urge to blame and replacing it with a desire to debug the code of our dynamic using rigorous I statements.
The debugging is so key.
And finally, we looked at how to sustain the entire structure day to day, eschewing those grand performative gestures for active, mindful presence and the steady, lubricating motor oil of micromomentum and gratitude.
It is a comprehensive, profoundly challenging blueprint. It really moves us entirely away from the passive checklist of modern connection and into a framework of continuous, intentional, and deeply rewarding cultivation.
And for you, the learner listening to this deep dive right now, whether you are applying these insights to revitalize a romantic partnership, to salvage a decades-long friendship that has drifted, or to navigate a complex professional dynamic with a co-founder, these aren't just clever tips or temporary life hacks.
No, they really aren't.
They are the foundational architectural blueprints for building a shared history. And that shared history doesn't just make your days a little easier, it actively enhances both your individual biological health and your collective well-being.
That intentional shared history is ultimately the very thing that gives our lives profound meaning.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on everything we've uncovered from these incredible sources today.
Okay.
We know now definitively that the most meaningful relationships are living systems in a state of constant becoming.
Yes.
We know the science, we know that genuine vulnerability actively lowers defensive cortisol, and that curiosity de-escalates conflict.
The data is clear.
So, what would happen to our society at large if we applied the curiosity shift and micromomentum not just to our spouses or our siblings or our best friends, but to every casual interaction we have in a single day?
Oh, wow.
What if we decided to debug the code of our interactions with the exhausted barista, the deeply frustrated coworker, or the aggressive stranger in traffic? If vulnerability lowers the defenses of the people closest to us, could we collectively change the air in the room of the entire world? Just a thought for the blueprints of tomorrow. Until next time.